beekeeper was harvesting a supply of honey when his son noticed that there were 3 bees struggling on top of a 5-gallon bucket full of honey. They were covered in sticky honey, and they were drowning. His son asked him if he could help them, but his father said that he was sure they wouldn't survive. His son, however, persisted, and he asked him again if he could at least take them out of the honey and put them out of their misery. His father finally conceded and scooped the bees up out of the bucket. He put them in an empty yogurt container, and then he put the plastic container outside of the shed where they were working. A while later, the boy went to check on the honey-covered bees. And because his father had disrupted the hive with his honey collection, there were bees flying all over outside. And when he checked on the 3 little bees, he saw that they were surrounded by a group of their sisters, since all bees are female. And they were cleaning the exhausted honey-covered bees, helping them to get rid of all the honey off their bodies. The boy came back a short time later, and there was only 1 bee left in the container. She was still being tended to by her sisters. When he finished his chores, the boy checked one last time. The container was empty. All 3 of these had been cleaned off enough to fly away. At the end of this little story, the writer, who was the boy, stated that those 3 little bees lived because they were surrounded by family and friends who would not give up on them. Family and friends who refused to let them drown in all that stickiness and resolved to help them until the last little bee could be set free. He said, we could all learn a thing or two from the bees. Always be kind. Always be kind. Always be kind is a valid message to take from that story, but is that the only point of that story? As I've told you before here time and time again, when you are on the spiritual path, you must look for and explore multiple levels of what is actually going on in front of you. Yes, the love the bees showed for their sisters was powerful, but what else was there? What else was there was the consciousness of infinite intelligence. Now, there are scientists who believe that animals have no consciousness. They only have instincts. Their brains are too small to have consciousness. But looking at what those bees did for their sisters, can we truly say that they were acting just out of instinct? I say no. There was more to it than that. So I ask you to ignore the narrow-minded arrogance of those who discount the demonstration of their consciousness. Instead, I urge you to remember the principles by which we live. Principle number 1, we believe in infinite intelligence. Principle number 2, we believe the phenomena of nature, both physical and spiritual, are the expression of infinite intelligence. Infinite intelligence is consciousness. Consciousness exists at all levels of existence. Atoms have a consciousness. Trees have a consciousness. Bees have a consciousness. Humans have a consciousness. And that's it, right? We're the top of the consciousness hierarchy. Not a chance. Not even close. What about the angels? Thank you, Rick, for that song. The modern philosopher J. Adler calls angels minds without bodies. Angels are another form of consciousness. Angels are all around us, and they're here. Artistic interpretations of angels exist all around us. There are statues of angels, paintings of angels. I have an angel painting. Then there are angel cards and pendants of angels, movies of angels, and music of angels. Surrounded by everywhere in our society. But do we really know what angels are? Mostly no. Those who study the subject say angels are higher beings who have never incarnated in human bodies. Their purpose is to serve the needs of infinite intelligence as it relates to the physical world. One of their purposes is to bring messages. The angels brought messages to tell Mary that she was going to have a baby. One of their purposes is to maintain order in the universe. They say there are angels taking care of the oceans and the mountains. Every one of us, one of their purposes is to protect us. Every one of us has a guardian angel whose primary job is to watch over us humans during our entire lives on earth. This is the belief in many different religious traditions around the world. Ancient Greek philosophy claimed the guardian spirits were assigned to each person for life. So does Zoroaster. There's a belief in guardian angels who God charges with lifetime care of humans is also a vital part of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. So do you have a guardian? Yes, you do. Of course you do. And if you really think about it, you can probably call instances where you were helped by your guardian angel. Maybe a book fell off a shelf that you needed, and it fell off to grab your attention. Or maybe your door opened unexpectedly to reveal a new path for you. You probably discounted it as coincidence. But actually, there's no such thing as coincidence. Part of the reason that I'm alive today is that my guardian angel saved my life on more than one occasion. I wear a pacemaker to keep my heart operating correctly. It was installed a couple of years ago. A couple of hours after it was installed at the hospital, the surgeon came to tell me how impressed he was with my bypass work. You see, I got a triple bypass heart surgery back in 1998. And triple bypass work is expected to last maybe 10, 15 years before it has to be worked on again. It has to be updated because wear and tear. It's not permanent. They don't last. He was amazed because it looked so good. He said it could have been done yesterday. It still looked brand new. So he told me that the guy who did that was a real pro. And I told him that the surgeon who did my operation won. Then I thought about it. I recalled the surgeon's name was Dr. Angel. There were so many dimensions in the world of angels that's impossible to adequately cover all of them, even in a talk or even in multi-session workshops. But let's take one aspect of angels for our talk today. Angels as protectors. Back in the early 2000s, I was a guest minister at a church in Marin County, California. While I was there, I was told a story about one of my parishioners regarding an angel happening. She claimed that a friend of hers was driving on one of the mountain roads in the area when her tire blew out and she lost control of the car. Now, the views in Marin County are spectacular. It is a beautiful, beautiful place. Lots of hills, lots of trails. 80% of it is uninhabited because the government owns it and protects it. But the roads are narrow. So when the tire blew, there was nowhere to go but over the edges of the side of the road and down the mountainside. But miraculously, the car stopped with only one wheel hanging over the road. Her 7-year-old daughter was with her and was obviously in shock at just what had just happened. She reached back to comfort the girl whose tears were flowing down her face. But before her hand could reach her, the little girl turned to her mother and said, "Did you see the angel?" The mother asked, "What angel?" The girl said, "The angel that pushed the road." When asked to describe the angel, the little girl described the beautiful winged being with flowing robes who was very, very large. You know, sometimes they actually do appear that way. In my Working with Angels classes, I've had many students in part where we meet our guardian angels, and they often describe their guardian angel as appearing like that. Long flowing robes, wings, 9 feet tall or more. They also don't have to appear with wings. or be super tall. They don't have to do that. There's a story of a young woman who got off of her bus at the wrong stop. She had to walk home through a neighborhood that was not very safe. During our walk, she prayed for protection and kept praying for protection during the entire time she was walking home. When she got home, then she fell to her knees and prayed in gratitude for her safe arrival. A few days later, one of her acquaintances from the neighborhood said hi, and he says, "Those were a couple of big guys you were with the other day." When the young woman asked, "What guys?" the acquaintance said, "The two guys you were walking between when I saw you walking home the other day." So the protection she prayed for had arrived. She just couldn't see it, but that wasn't the point. Everybody else could. Sometimes they do appear in physical form so that you can actually interact with them. For example, Sophie Burnham, who is a playwright, poet, mystical teacher, and author of several best-selling books, has numerous mystical experiences along with a very dramatic angel encounter, which she shares in her best-selling book, A Book of Angels. Sophie Burnham. She says, "One day our party skied in Tenia, France, in the Alps. It's a full-day strip up the funicular to a high peak, and then one long run that takes most of the morning and ends in a nearby town. In the afternoon, you ski at Tenia and take a bus back home." Now, up on the mountain, it had not snowed for weeks. The track was packed hard as a toboggan slide. I came fast around one corner, and just at the edge of the path, I fell. I found myself sliding on my back, head first downhill. Now, when you fall skiing, you're supposed to twist your skis around to the downhill side, dig into the snow, and brake to a stop. But no matter how hard I tried, I could not make that twist. The ground was hard, and so heavily I acted like a big ball bearings carrying me along. I remember thinking it was ludicrous, sledding on my back, head first, battered into small stones. I was afraid, though I knew I was off the track. After 2 or 3 attempts, however, to flip my skis, I decided it didn't matter, that soon I would hit a tree or a rock and stop. Instead, my attention was captured by the sky. The sky. It wasn't just blue sky. It radiated blue, green, yellow, pink. My heart was wrenched out of my body with rapture, as if recognizing something. Home. I was barreling down a hill at 30 and 40 miles an hour, bumping over stones, and I was filled with joy. I saw the perfection of all things, including this mad head-first slide. What did it matter that I died right then? I thought irrationally. That too was welcome. Wondrous. Suddenly a black blur whizzed past me, and I crashed into another skier's legs. David, my husband, was at the top of the slope. He saw what happened as he stood there wondering what to do. He told me later how a man shot past him out of nowhere, skiing like crazy. He tore down the slope like a bullet winging past me. Then he turned and dug in his skis, and I slammed against his legs. It didn't hurt. Neither did he fall from the impact or even apparently stumble. He didn't budge as 120 pounds of woman plowed into him in such a high speed. I stood up. I looked at him. He was dressed completely in black. Black hat, black parka, black pants, black skis. This was strange because no one dressed in black on the ski slopes in those days. Usually it was vibrant yellows, reds, and blues. Merci beaucoup, I said. Then I looked into his eyes. They too were black, but full of such lights, I could not move. Merci, I said again. I don't remember his answering. I don't remember any voice. He turned and started up the hill, herringboning, but at such speed he had the strength of giants. Each of his steps counted for 2 or 3 of mine. Ordinarily, I could keep up with any skier I'd met before, but not him. I clamored after him, hurrying, pushing myself. I wanted to look into his eyes again. I wanted to ask him who he was and hear his voice. But these were not developed thoughts, but merely the propelling force. At the top, he took off immediately, ignoring David, who reached out likewise to thank him. He zoomed away. A minute later, I reached the top. David caught me. "Are you all right?" But I pushed him away, and I said, "Yes, yes." I called as I raced down the track after the man in black, who had suddenly disappeared around the curve of the hill. The path was wide and steep. It plunged downhill, curved to the left around an outcropping of rocks, and opened to a vista of the whole valley below, mile upon mile of open space. No one was in sight. I ventured past the rocks, casting right and left, looking for a pocket in which he could have disappeared, but the only people in sight were tiny specks far down the valley and tenured, black dots. It was inconceivable that he could have shot the valley walls that fast, yet he had disappeared. Finally, I resumed skiing down the original piste. Part of the way down the mountain, my stomach dropped. To my left rose a cliff. It was at the top of this cliff that I had fallen. Had I not been stopped, I would have fallen off that cliff into a rubble of rocks below. Only that skier had stopped me from being killed. That is the experience of Sophie Vernon. But you know, sometimes angels don't show themselves at all. They just make things happen. I had the pleasure of meeting and conversing with a woman by the name of Dorothy McLean. Dorothy wrote a book called To Hear the Angels Sing. It is a recounting of her experiences because she was one of the founders of a place in Scotland called the Garden of Findhorn. Dorothy, along with 2 of her friends, were in a down period of their lives. They were living out of a trailer. Now, since they were so low on money, they decided to try growing their own food. The trouble was that the ground in that area of Scotland had a high level of sand and clay, plus the climate was cool, not the best condition for growing crops. So in addition to their physical efforts, they also turned to spirit, and they prayed for help from infinite intelligence. Now, after a few weeks, they began getting messages in the form of dreams and subconscious whisperings as to what they should do with the soil and how they should cultivate the various plants in their garden. Soon they began to realize that they were getting the help from the angels. Eventually, their work in the garden was so successful that their crops began to win awards for being the biggest, healthiest, and most beautiful fruits and vegetables in the country, in the county, and even in the entire country of Scotland. Of course, they gave credit to the angels. But so many people came to see what they were doing to be so successful. So many people came wanting to learn, how do you do it? How can you teach us how to do this? That the now world-famous spiritual community known as Findhorn was founded. The angels did it. You know, consciousness exists all around us in many forms because infinite intelligence is all there is. And infinite intelligence is consciousness. Remember principle number 2, we believe phenomena of nature, both physical and spiritual, are the expression of infinite intelligence. And one of the great gifts that infinite intelligence has given to us is the angels. They are here to help us. All we have to do is let infinite intelligence know that we're in need of help, and the angels will come. Remember the words of Dr. Michael Grosso. He said, researchers have found from many types of studies that the less rigid one's mindset, the more likely it is that a paranormal force or idea will break into the experience. The more unworldly our minds, the more detached from habitual patterns of response, the greater is our openness to the promptings from a higher reality principle. And the more likely it is that extraordinary things will occur in our lives. Your belief in the possibility of angels opens your mind to recognize their presence and identifying their assistance when you get it. And when you receive their help, just say thank you. Don't rationalize it away. Just say thank you. Don't dismiss it because it doesn't make sense. Just say thank you. Don't deny it because you find the idea scary. Just say